This is Into Healing, and I'm your host, Mira Adura. Today's Into Healing guest is Ruth Oclander. Ruth is a much lauded practitioner of acupuncture, a modality that most of us have heard of but may not have experienced. Ruth speaks as a no-nonsense ambassador for this healing intuitive art. We touch on relatable topics such as going through change, learning from failure, slowing down to listen, and a big one, parenting. I find her balance of practical wisdom and skilled expertise tremendously helpful in navigating today's world. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us for more transformational healing stories.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Mira.
So you're an acupuncturist. How did you find your calling in this space?
I moved to Seattle after college in the Midwest, and I was working downtown, and I went to a naturopath, and she said, I'm just finishing my acupuncture degree. Can I put some needles in you? And I had an injury on my foot, and I was playing ultimate, and so she said, that's the point of anger in acupuncture, and she did some needles, and I sobbed. And then I had driven my bus around the country looking for grad schools, and Bastyr University was 10 blocks from my house, and I didn't think twice. I was young enough that I just did a leap of faith. And so I've said that it chose me.
Just to give us a little bit of context, what was your upbringing like? How did you grow up?
Bloomington, Indiana, is a big college town, and it was innocent, and it was stressful, in that there were a lot of things that I wasn't, things are what they are when you're growing up, and you're doing your best to make your way. And the things that I wasn't aware of were the things that were operating on me, but I couldn't describe them. My mom raised me, and she's Danish heritage, and when you meet her, you say she is the nicest person. And my dad was Argentine Jewish, and that is more complicated. And so having those two things inside of me while growing up in the 80s in Bloomington was just about listening to the radio, going to football games, doing my homework, that kind of thing. I wasn't adventurous, but there was something in my spirit that as soon as college was over, I moved west, and again, a leap of faith. And then I started learning the hard way. So acupuncture became like a way for me to start understanding that there were things going on inside of me that I could make sense of for myself, and that could happen for other people too.
How was it growing up at home?
We were poor, and I thought, I can't rock the boat. And I didn't really want to. Like, my mom was very accepting. I think I had that experience of looking out and not really feeling like I was matching up. I think a lot of people feel that way. A little bit of a misfit, and doing my best to find some belonging. And so there was that internal tension. When I look back now, I see that my family had a lot of the effects of alcoholism, the effects of being immigrants. My mom's mom had multiple sclerosis, and she was in a nursing home. So we had some unusual things that nobody spoke about. They just were how life was. And it left us kind of on our own. There were no real supports for us. So I did my best to kind of stand still and work for something better, strive.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a strength.
Yeah.
When I going back and seeing that it came from a place of fear, it kind of helps me keep the part of it that is a strength, and then let go of the part of it that was overworking because I was afraid of other things.
When you say afraid of other things, could you share what you mean by that? Like what things?
When you look around and you see some things are examples and some things are warnings, I mean, if I really spin it out, like just afraid of ending up losing my way and what that would look like for me. And that, without knowing what that was, that would have been a sense of shame. And so as hard as you work, if that's where you're coming from, you don't lose that until you turn around and face it. And when I squared up with it, then I started being able to be more honest with myself and more accepting.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and bring that into my work.
Of course.
So it seems to me that that is a lot of what I've learned along the way, and how many different shapes it takes for so many people.
So let's talk about acupuncture, and we'll get to how it's influenced your life. But what is acupuncture? How does it work?
I'm still figuring that out. I haven't gotten tired of it. I think I've been doing this for 28 years. And for me, it's sitting down with people and having an hour to be honest about what's going on inside of them. People think of acupuncture as needles. I describe the needles as like little kitten whiskers. They're flimsy. They're not the needles that you would get a shot. And they penetrate the body's barriers and defenses. And then within you, long ago, thousands of years ago, people were paying attention to the forces of nature, and they noticed, like, those are the same. We can attribute our energy to those same forces. And they started inventorying and cataloging imbalances and strengths. And then they came up with a system of pathways on the body. And there are yin points, there are yin channels, there are yang channels, meridians. And all 12 of the meridians follow similar patterns. So each of the elements has a strength and has a way of tending towards weakening us. And then each of the points has a function and a name. The names are poetic. And it was Eastern culture's way of embracing observation and applying it to our lives and to our constitutions. They just know that everybody has a way of tending towards imbalance. It's not a fault. And that's how they work with the body's energy.
You said yin and yang. For people who don't know what that is, can you explain?
Yin is feminine, quiet, calm, winter, night. And then yang would be masculine, active, day, summer, things that are growing.
And then when you're tending to the body and you're putting in needles, can you just give maybe one or two examples of what kind of releases or what kind of things you're kind of working on?
When I choose points, it's after talking to somebody and noticing their tone of voice and the color of their skin and
Their tongue?
Their pulses, and the way that they're describing what is important to them. So some people might describe things with grief. Some people might describe things with anger. Some people might describe more what they need to be organized or how they need to connect. And those are all indications of a person's wood, fire, earth, metal, or water. And then when I put somebody on the table for needles, then I choose points that are going to open the gates and help your own natural energy balance your body and shift it around. I'm thinking of an example. I have a person who I've worked with for years who has so much wood energy, which looks like he wants to know how things are going to work out. And he's very accountable and strong like a tree. And the interesting thing is when I soothe his wood, which means like nurturing wood with water, to soften it, that works for one part of his constitution. And what I noticed over time was that when I chose points that were more fire, the heart, or earth, the mother element, that his soft side would show up. And when I listened to him, his family was so important to him, and especially his relationship with his mother. And those were the things that his relationship with his father was so challenging, that the feminine energy was the safe harbor. And that was really what was hidden behind the things that he needed to do to function in the world, to be safe. Where he really wanted to go was that more yin, fire and earth.
Being held.
Being somebody who can express himself in that way and feel safe.
Beautiful.
So then you choose points on the fire element, on the fire meridian, or the earth meridian, or you choose
to connect them to that.
Well, and there are wood points on the fire channel. Each of the meridians has points that relate to the other meridians on its channel.
It's fascinating.
People really don't ask me about acupuncture, and I used to kind of wonder, and now I think it was a gift.
Yeah, for me, you're just so intuitive with your gifts. I feel like you've kind of embodied acupuncture. It's just what you have a very intuitive way of practicing.
Thank you. It's easier for me to work than talk about it.
Yes, I know. So I think we've already covered a little bit like how acupuncture works practically, but how does it work spiritually?
That's up to the person at the time. I heard a long time ago that people will choose the person and the time that they will heal. Again, I'm thinking about this idea of it holds a space where people can be still and listen in. And in our culture, people's spirits have left their body, or they're hiding in a corner of their body. And like I said about myself growing up, there's still a voice inside of you that you want to listen to. And if I can make eye contact, I heard a long time ago that if you look in a person's left eye, that's where their soul is housed.
I always look into people's left eye and I never look into the right eye.
And that's what that means is I'll grasp. If I hear something, I want to put a note. I want to put dog ear that and bring it into, it's a truth for me. And then I need to listen to what's true for somebody else. And that's where I try to meet people. So inviting somebody to be able to be real about what's going on for them and work backwards from that, and then bring that past forward, get present, and that shifts where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't have any, I think that it works like magic. For me, the more real I can be about it, the more comfortable that process is. Like, it's not esoteric. It's not some secret that I have. It's just people being able to breathe into who they are.
Almost reminds you who you are, because it sheds layers, Yeah.
Well said.
So who benefits from acupuncture?
I see people who aren't finding what they need in Western medicine. I don't know. When I I feel like people come from the sky. I don't know who makes their way to my office. It is people. It's people with a Shen. Shen is the spirit in Chinese medicine, or their soul. There's a, or maybe it's the Hun, which is the animal aspect of the liver, that's, insisting that something needs to change. And so I love working with people just with physical pain, back pain, because that has a story. Why were you doing what you were doing, and what were you thinking when this thing happened? Did it happen over time, or did it happen suddenly? Those are yin and yang aspects of acupuncture. And I also like working with fertility and women, especially now for women. As we grow up, we kind of put that part of ourselves that wants to be a mother aside to take care of the more demanding things, and our body hears that. And then by the time we're ready to let ourselves let that guard down, there are some barriers. Things have hardened, and releasing the stories and the hidden beliefs that we have about all of our responsibilities and giving ourselves permission to receive. So fertility, body work, and the biggest one would be anxiety, depression, anger, and that shows up as headaches, insomnia, exhaustion, confusion. Those are the things I really like working with. People are so receptive to just being asked a couple of questions and then trusting, kind of starting to trust, like being open, being willing.
You starting to talk about all these different things that acupuncture can support reminds me about how our bodies we're our own healer. Like we're our own healer. We just need to support it to kind of do its own healing. Can you speak a little bit to that?
When you start doing your work, when I start doing my work, I realize there's a lot that has gone on, that is going on. And I want to keep it simple. And I want to go easy and gentle. And I want to keep going. A lot of the time, the people might show up and think, how many visits until I get better? And that's okay too. Then that tells me that this is a time and a place. There's a moment in time. Hopefully they will be back when there's another moment in time. And then there are people, a lot of the people that I am lucky enough to have in my practice, I've been seeing for years. It's a check-in point, and if you are able to find a practitioner that you can go to when you want support, then you get to say this thing, and maybe the practitioner can say, this thing sounds like this other thing in this way, and just hold something up that you can reflect on. Again, like me staying in my space so that really it's offering you something, as you said at the beginning, that you notice about yourself. And if somebody else can ask a question that helps your mind explore it and take something with you that helps you shift your orientation and your relationship with how you see yourself in the world and your perspective about how you see the world around you.
Recently, you shared with me that you said the patients tell me where to put the needles and I listen. What do you mean by that?
I have a really close friend who sits like this. And she's such a wonderful person, and she wants to get it all right. And she has anxiety, and it's hard for her to put into words other than, I want to get it all right. the way that she says that is specific to work or her kids, or her own exercise and lifestyle. When she sits like this, or when she talks there, then I know that there are points, the water points along the chest, are going to nourish the fire energy. There's a water-fire disconnect, and I can use those meridians so in Chinese medicine, the fire element is the sun, the heart, and if it is burning too bright, you are overheating. And if that's been going on for a long time, your central nervous system is filling you with anxiety. And the fire is meant to warm the water of the ocean, the soul, and then the soul's wisdom comes back up and mists the heart. And so those two elements balance each other out. If you put points in along the sternum, or maybe a point to relax the diaphragm, which is a constraining part. There's a breath, right? So this is how the layers of the theory behind Chinese medicine fold into each other and flow. Those points along the chest ease your breathing. That changes the regulation of your heart. And then the messages being sent to your body tell you that you're safe.
What have you learned about the human body after working with it for decades?
You know, I wake up every day, and I think this is a miracle. How many cells are in our body? How do they regenerate? How do they differentiate their function? I wish that we had a more basic understanding of our bodies and the things that we can do to care for ourselves and each other. That would begin with touch. There would be a lot more resting. My learning has been around letting my body restore itself. So it's a miracle. And then we go out into a world full of miracles that are just as complicated. I knew nothing about electricity, but I take lighting for granted. I would be drinking out of my hands if we peel back the layers of a house or of our bodies, the answers still aren't there. It's a mystery, and the clues are what's happening in our bodies now. There's one of my favorite sayings is, if you want to know where you've been, look at your body now. And if you want to know where you're going, look at your mind now.
Oh, that's super powerful.
If you want to think about women and their reproductive system and how we know almost nothing about that, and the amount of energy that is housed in our bellies, whether you're male or female, the chakras tell us that is our sense of survival. It's our sense of loyalty. It's our sense of who we are. It's personal strength, having a place in the world. All of that in our bellies. In our chest, it's what we house is hope and inspiration.
Inspiration literally means to breathe, right?
And then in our senses, in our head, trying to let our senses give us information over what our minds are telling us. And our minds tell us a lot of things that reinforce the perceptions and the experiences and the beliefs that we formed a long time ago. That mine are, the more I can let go of what I thought I knew, the more that opens up for me.
So I've been visiting you for acupuncture for years. But you've also shared with me that acupuncture is about what I can offer this person for this hour. It's a deep relationship built over time, but you're also meeting me in the now How do you balance the depth with the newness or the nowness?
There's a discipline and a discernment around what I sense in a person, and it's not until they invite me to that space or give me permission, or for them it's the thing that they're ready to be talking about, and faith that it's not about what I think I might know because I haven't had that life. And even when people, there's a great Dave Eggers quote that I can tell you everything about myself and still you don't know me. As much as somebody has shared with me and how I take that to heart, it's not up to me to know what they're ready for. They get to, so again, what the hour holds and what the arc of time, where that meets the arc of time, the needles, that's the great thing, is the needles are regulating. The points are regulating. They can either tonify, strengthen, or they can sedate and calm. That's that yin and yang aspect. And I don't have to worry about that if I am centered and coming from the right place. I don't always get it right. Once the needles are in, I might explain what points I've chosen to give an indication that I'm listening to what the person has said, and maybe that's when I get to do a little interpreting of put some words, different words that hopefully are how a person needs to hear something. If I have to be careful there. If I say something in a way that somebody hears, and it doesn't land right, that's not helpful, that's harmful. So again, it's less of, and at the same time, if I can share something that I can relate to, and that's the gift of acupuncture for me and my healing path, is I can relate to what people are saying about what's going on inside of them and their hidden beliefs. So then I just take this as, okay, for today, this is what we're doing, and I remember things about you other things about you, and hopefully that allows you to let your guard down. And then I'll do some holding of doing some cranial work, and then walk away and let the person do their own work.
The next question is we're gonna go back to listening a little bit. How do you truly listen?
That is something that I'm learning. It gets easier as I get older. And my office has an energy that, there are plants, there are comfortable chairs. The lighting gives me a sense of ease. So that helps my brain to be quiet. And I practice listening to sounds that are far away. I practice listening to the noise in my head that doesn't stop. I have thought bubbles above my table where people can put their thoughts, and then if little glass containers, and if they want them, they can pick them up on the way out. Most of the things that I need to think about, I don't need to think about, and that's a gift. So that helps it helps me to stop thinking my thoughts about my life and my worldview, and then tune into other people, because there's such beauty in other people's experience. I also try to listen to higher power, let power greater than myself. That has a lot of the messages that keep me out of trouble. And I tend to get myself going.
How do you do that? How do you listen to the greater powers?
I like to start my day getting out of bed and getting on my knees and praying. That's right in line with my mom and my Midwest upbringing. And it really doesn't have much to do with that. It has more to do with what I notice when I do. It's also kind of like touching a mezuzah, that starting on my knees means I'm surrendering, and I'm asking for help and guidance and support and protection. And then the things that I encounter in my day look more like they're happening for me, not to me. So it holds a space, and I get to think about other people when I start my day. I took from Mr. Rogers just saying people's names as a form of prayer. And that's my mothering way of putting a bubble around people, for them and also for me, because I don't like the idea of grieving, even the small things. But I've also learned to turn that over. I've been an insomniac for a long time, and I finally now decided that that's a time for me to listen. And I get a lot of nice downloads from the universe, from the cosmos. And then a big one that I have to practice with listening is not thinking what I'm thinking about what somebody else is saying, which leads me to opinion and judgment. Dropping that, and I'm not, dropping that is me asking for help from the universe, being willing to not think I know what I know, that more will be revealed.
Cool. Thank you. When we listen and then we realize that it's time for a change in our lives, what's next?
I thought two things. I thought trouble and
Disruption, right? Like there's a certain disruption that happens.
learning what that we have a sense of unworthiness, or a sense of discouragement or self-doubt, and letting our lives be a process of growing as a person towards the things that are actually going to bring us happiness. So that discouragement, dissatisfaction, discontent, that's inside of me. That's not coming from outside of me. What do they say? Happiness is an inside job. So I'm going to go through something hard, and that's going to be a gift. I don't know what that gift is going to be, but if I keep holding on to the thing that I was forcing because I loved it, or I cared about it, or I wanted it to be a certain way.
Or it felt safe.
Right. The universe has something better in mind for me. I don't know what that is. I don't get to know everything. I don't get to have life look exactly the way I want it to. And that might have been how I grew up, thinking that if I work hard enough, that I'll get rid of all the hard, bad things.
I mean, so many of us, right?
And until I kind of surrender to that mistaken point of view, I'm not going to lose the things that I'm doing that are creating my own suffering. I'm still going to have hard times. I'm just going to be able to find some light along the way. And then I'm going to get where I get. So if I learn along the way that failures give me something really important, which is humility and gratitude, then I'm more okay than I was when I started.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday I heard life does not get easier. We just get better at doing hard things. And I love that.
Where did you hear that?
I heard it. I had heard a TED speaker say that, and I was like, oh, that really resonates with me. We just get better at it. Doesn't get any easier.
I don't know if I get better at it inside, but I find people that I can be honest with and that I can laugh with, and that love me when I thought that maybe this would be the loss of that. Things get sorted out for me.
Yeah, you kind of have to trust that.
And that's happening in my body. I am, when I go through hard things, it shows up in my body. Anne Sexton says the body cannot lie. So that's also where people tell me that this hurts here, and then they point to a part in their body. And that happens to be a blood nourishing point. And blood is yin, and blood nourishes the spirit. If people tell me that they have hair loss, and I know that hair houses memory, I can ask questions that are gentle. It may or may not be the exact question, and I'm just messy enough that I don't try to sort that out.
So I'm so now interested in how hair houses memory. I'm like, tell me more.
If you look at hair loss, it's overthinking, or it's the spirit fighting something. There's kind of a desperation to how people are talking about things around the experience that they're resisting, and not even being able to talk about the thing that was traumatic, that was the experience, or the way that life is happening. That's a little bit more my sense of hair loss.
Interesting.
In women, there's an association with the thyroid that then you would have to trace back to the liver and the kidney and the sanjiao, which it doesn't have it's more the endocrine system, and how those messages from our brain, it's the override from our thinking mind is in trauma, and then the neurochemical, the cascade of chemicals through the body is off.
Yeah. For any of us who deal with deep-rooted trauma, change can be so scary. How do people find the courage to face their fears?
How do people find the courage? I think that it finds them. It feels like walking on ice. There's a lot of breathing. There's a lot of regulating just to stay upright. For me, it feels like being at the bottom of the ocean and waiting and just kind of floating back up and noticing, like, there are some light particles. Now I'm noticing a shaft of light. And we feel isolated and like what's happening is a secret. Being able to share what's happening with somebody and regather our sense of who we are. We have to give ourselves time for that. And it almost has to be, a daily practice. It's not something that I'm going to keep in touch with if I'm not having that conversation with myself and finding resources. And a resource can be, for me, listening, like Taylor Swift.
Amazing.
She's amazing. So and it can be whoever you want it to be. There are songs that have the right message at the right time. What I mean by Taylor Swift is she's given a whole set of people a voice, and she writes honestly about things for herself. This might be a terrible example for a lot of people. And that's why I like it, is because what I'm saying is that healing comes in unlikely places, and that comes from that listening. Also turning it over to, I have what's called a God box. And if something that usually trauma comes from a sense of powerlessness that we mistake for helplessness. So we feel that something has happened to us. And then we don't, and then our choices get really limited in our mind because we're having trauma, which is fight, flight, freeze. There are also other responses to trauma like tending and mending that are starting to be acknowledged. And those become, we start taking those, we start experiencing things that are not traumatic as traumatic. We recruit.
Overcouple. Yeah.
We recruit things. So then we're kind of, our prefrontal cortex that's adaptive and self-aware and able to compromise and adjust, we have to bring that back online. And so I put things in a God box, let go of it, and then get on with something else. And that something else can be gardening, getting my hands in the earth, looking up at the sky, watching the sunset. For me, that's color therapy. These are things that are accessible. When I am really upset, they are not the things that I want. What I want is to force a solution. I want to get out a hammer. And, that worked for me when I was younger. And I felt like I needed to, if I stopped running, I was going to sink. And then I had to slow down. I remember in yoga teacher training, and I asked my mentor, like after I'd done my practice class, she said, slow down. And in my mind, I heard it and I thought, no way. And I wasn't ready. And there was a part of me that with 2 small kids and work, I was still carrying around things that I was afraid of. So that was over 10 years ago, right? And for me to even recognize that I had to slow down and listen to how I came to be where I was, and that all was not lost, that I'd made great decisions, and I'd made decisions that were right for me. And I had to learn, just like everybody else. Yeah. I had blind spots, though, and that's such a mercy when those things, it's such a gift when those things, however they are revealed, me being willing and ready.
Part of what you're saying is making me realize how we have to be patient with healing, like how it takes time, and we live in these cultures that are all about the quick fix and we want everything now. I mean, you order that Amazon thing and it shows up this afternoon, And how do you, in order to do this work, how do you slow down? How do you have patience? How do you kind of...
I have had to do noticing that I carry expectations into almost everything. And those expectations are where I can apply a little bit of awareness and wisdom, that if I lift that expectation, is what's happening just what's happening? And then I move away again from judging myself, thinking that I should be able to make other things happen, or that this thing that happened shouldn't have happened. That's a definition of trauma.
Just a little something on, just specific on acupuncture. Sometimes when you're getting acupuncture, there's like, you're trying to find where the point is, and then it's put in, and there's just something where you like literally feel an instant shift happening in your body, and it feels quite like magic. Can you just speak to that?
When I was my first year in acupuncture school, a couple of the people, my class was 12 people, they gave out awards, and mine was the Zen point locator. So I'm the person who, like, if I'm talking to you, I'm going to reach over and you're going to say, oh, that's where my arm hurts. And so I don't even know. We don't know all of the energy that we're transmitting all of the time. But for me, being able to look at Command Master, this point that everybody knows on you, like I can see where that needle would go. I don't know why I can see that. and then what's happening for you is the stars aligned, and that was the right point. And there is a lot of philosophy around time of day and needles and pulses, and for me, it's not holding on too tight to that. I also have a personal question around how this information was transmitted. It was transmitted from philosophers and scholars that were predominantly men. And my understanding is that women probably played a part in this. So I've tried to collect my practice, the wisdom of my practice, by listening, by hearing the things, and doing my best to honor that it's important to know the basics, to have learned them and studied them and keep in touch with them. Stay in the conversation by listening to other people, to talks that people who are doing a lot of great work. But then to know that this is in real time. I'm talking to somebody in Portland, Oregon, who has managed to get themselves to my office in their busy day, and them knowing that I have that awareness of them allows their energy to meet the needle and make that change for them.
You have a sense of ease about you that's so lovely. Where does that come from?
Oh, that's funny. I'm thinking of my kids, whether they would agree or disagree.
Well, we're going to get to your kids in a second.
A sense of ease. I've spent about 6 years recovering from a pretty big change in my life, and it's given me the ability to laugh at myself, and to maybe know that I matter a little bit, and that, I've known you a long time, and you're asking me questions that are hard to answer. So I'm doing my best to. I did some yoga this morning. Stood on my head because I'm not totally easy. I can rear up. I'm fierce at times. I'm all the things that all people are. I don't think that you could possibly. I can't get away with that.
Okay, let's get into your kids. So as a mom of 2 teenagers now, what has acupuncture taught you about parenting?
My kids don't like needles.
At all?
Nope.
So they resist any acupuncture?
They now are, because you know what? I did not try to push that on them. It's like my version of being a movie star, and the kids don't know that. Yeah.
Great analogy.
But now it does work. Kids don't have as many barriers. So they'll ask me for something after they've suffered, or they want they want me to keep my distance, and it's their choice. I don't know. They've got their own things going on as kids. They tolerate me in a way that's very loving. So that's enough. We have, we're really connected and really honest.
Is there anything that acupuncture has kind of taught you about parenting them? Like wisdom from the actual skill that you have?
Maybe that I get that they have a constitution, wood, fire, earth, metal, or water, and all of us have that constitution. And keeping in mind that when you're a teenager, you have a lot of fire in you. But I lose perspective all the time.
As we all do, right?
Oh, that's family. Yeah. It's, I can be unskilled and I get to practice. And, one of the things that I heard with my kids is make sure that your eyes light up when they walk in the room. Mm-hmm. And for me, I don't know what what their path is. I know that I want them to be able to come home to roost, and I don't want to drive them crazy, meaning I want to be aware of myself. That's more my job as a parent, and giving them a show of faith. And then every once in a while, holding their feet to the fire, holding them accountable, make sure that they have some life skills. I got really good kids. Super lucky on that one.
How has your healing journey influenced your parenting?
It took me 2 years to get pregnant. And so that, I didn't take it for granted. That's made me deeply appreciative. I think I probably have a lot of earth element in me, which is the mothering, nurturing aspect. So it has been like a fish in water for me. They have a great sense of humor, and what a gift that is. They remind me of myself. They remind me of their dad. And they balance out who I am with that other half in a beautiful way. I grew up poor and kind of on my own, like a little bit of an urchin, latchkey kid from the age of 6 on. And I have made sure that my kids, now they're at a point where they have a lot of independence. But I wanted to have tools for the way that I showed up in their lives. And the universe gave me Positive Discipline, this way of parenting by Jane Nelson that is about significance and belonging and being kind and firm and creating resilient kids. So the language of love and spending one-on-one time together, those things have helped me heal. Walking them to school every day, going to our neighborhood school with a bunch of other kids and parents who are just happy that they got to school somewhat on time with their kids mostly clothed. I think that is another place that I've been able to be honest and comfortable with myself.
With your kids?
As a parent. And with my kids, for sure. I heard once that, like, kids know if you're not being honest. And that's hard.
Yeah. My kids always tell me the truth, Mama. I'm like, I'm telling you the truth. Tell me the truth. They always want to know the truth.
I love when you quote your kids.
Oh, I could quote them all day long.
I wish that I had hung a big white piece of paper up on a wall and then just taken a Sharpie and written down all of the things. That would be.
I have a little book that I like scribble things they tell me because I'm just like, they ask so many questions I have no answer to. So they feel like existential questions often. Yeah. It's easy for those who care for others to burn out. How do you replenish and heal yourself? Any tools you'd want to share that have worked for you?
Touch is really nice. Reading, walking my dog in the woods, gardening, making my own food, giving myself permission to do things that just bring me joy. And these have to be small things, or they have to be things that I can do a little at a time, learning as I go, and traveling, going away and exploring the world because it's a big world.
You're so good about that.
Dragging my kids along with me. And then I do have a group that I go to and I listen and I talk, and there's a common understanding of why we're all there. And it's a place where I can share for a few minutes. And it's like a family where we have a common goal. So that's that sense of belonging. There is a place where I belong, and that belonging for a little bit like 1 hour every once in a while helps me go back into the life that I live and know that I do have a sense of belonging in the world, that each of us do in our own place.
Oftentimes, especially I feel like in the West, healing oftentimes, or just wellness in general, feels a little inaccessible to some people. How do you think we can make healing more accessible?
Like, asking that question after talking about kids, I would hope that in school we start to talk about feelings, that we give kids opportunities to notice who they are and be recognized. For me, I learned what there kind of seemed to be a right answer, and that's no longer true in a good way. A thought that I just had is that the aspects of healthcare that are unaffordable are a problem. And then having people be accountable for the choices that they're making that are adding up, that in itself would give people a different orientation and ask people to be present in a way. We do have to breathe into how we're living our lives. And then maybe people will be able to make courageous choices if it were okay to, if there were time and more availability of like things that you can do at home together. Why don't we sit around and rub each other's feet or rub each other's necks at the end of the day? That's kind of a universal language. I think that cultures where people gather tend to have a quality of life that feels good, even if the health care or the healthy lifestyles aren't as available.
Yeah, because community is so healing.
It's a hard question. The answers that are most common right now are not satisfying people, and they're not meeting people in a place where we're really going to change how we feel about living our lives. And then we're going to keep making choices that create imbalance from a lack of awareness.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to when you said, how do we start infusing this in schools and educate kids and make emotion and feelings okay and give them tools to kind of help them navigate the world from such an early age.
And even so, me sitting down to talk with my kids about things that they want to know, like it or not conversation, they have a resistance to it. And if this is this hard for me and I really am not uncomfortable with this conversation, and my kids are thankful when I have those conversations, even if they
Squirm. Yeah, of course. And they'll appreciate it much later.
asking questions, asking what's going on with a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to ask different people who work in the healing space to share with us like a short everyday practice that they do that, we could share with everybody. Would you mind sharing something?
This is a thinking activity. If I feel a conflict brewing, if somebody has confronted me about something, I have learned that I have options. What I want to do, my pride, my feathers are ruffled, and that's a rumble strip for me. And that means put it in reverse, back up, find some power greater than myself. Think of somebody who handles these kinds of things better than I do, which is a lot of people. And so I kind of keep a cheat sheet of knowing that I have a strength and that it's easy for me to be caught off guard. And before I let that strength become something that's not a strength, then I will invite in, like, I'm not in charge here. My ego gets to shh. And what can I do to get myself back to a place where I have faith and I have trust and I have forgiveness? Mostly what I'm thinking is, this shouldn't have happened to me, and I need to forgive myself for thinking that. I don't need to forgive the other person. What they did made sense, even if it feels like it was hurtful or demeaning to me. If I can have all of that kind of happen very quickly, then later on I can go back and I can check in with myself about what I learned and grow that part of myself that's more adaptable to responding. So in the moment, I just have to throw it in reverse. What I can say to somebody else is, you may be right. And then later on, I get to come back to it and be more fearless and searching about my part in it and what I could learn from it. That maybe I wasn't being as considerate as I needed to be. And then maybe I'm just like, maybe a person just had a moment. I have a patient, I loved her saying, it was, everybody is a jerk once a day. And that's me too, right? So.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Mara. I don't get to talk about acupuncture. It was a challenge.
You did great.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. You can connect with Into Healing on TikTok and Instagram for more inspirational and behind-the-scenes content, and visit our website, intohealing.com, for transcripts and other goodies. Into Healing is made possible thanks to people like you. Contributions made through Venmo @IntoHealing or through our website, intohealing.com, help us bring you more inspiring episodes. This has been Into Healing with Mira Adura. Thank you for joining us.